Yeah, let's move on to kind of thinking about the actual process of writing for you. So when you are writing, what kind of, besides the fact that someone might knock on your door and come in and actually disturb you while you're doing it, what other kind of problems do you encounter? Kind of and what kind of strategies do you use to deal with, whether they're physical or psychological or emotional, whatever?
Yeah. I mean, I often write too much, and I often don't. I don't write in a very linear way, so I often end up with pages of writing that I couldn't publish or do anything with because it wouldn't make sense to somebody else, or it's just too much porridgey stuff to make someone else have to go through. So I often have to restructure. I often have to read things through, and sometimes I'll leave it in. This is a bit tedious, but I just have to do it sometimes. I'll go through a piece of writing and write in the margin what each paragraph is about, and then work out what order to put the paragraphs in. That's how kind of unstructured it can be sometimes. But I've also worked out that I'm a big procrastinator, so I'll often worry about whether a piece of work is good enough or whether my ideas are really good enough. So all those worries that we all have. But what I find out is if I just get up in the morning and write in my pajamas first thing without doing anything, I get a cup of tea, have a little ritual, get a cup of tea, sit down and just open the document where I'd left it and either write or go over the work that's already there, whichever appeals to me at that moment. It's like my brain hasn't quite switched. It's switched on well enough to work. I do work well in the morning, but those fears and those worries haven't quite switched on yet. So I find that really helps me just to write first thing in the morning, and I can just write for an hour, and then it just keeps moving forward slowly day by day, and I find that then I do have enough work. But otherwise, yeah, the worries can take hold a little bit, I think. How about you, Brian?
Have you ever encountered have you ever encountered anything like writer's block, or does that system kind of mean that you don't encounter that problem?
If I'm at the start of a piece of work, I can procrastinate horribly and not get to the beginning of that process, or I can kind of not want to get up early in the morning, strangely, and just kind of think, oh, I'll do it another day. And there's so many other jobs to do. So, writing lectures, examining PhDs, reading, admin work. There's lots of little jobs you can be getting on with, answering emails, all these things which are all enjoyable, but it's kind of easy to put the difficult thing to the bottom of the pile. So I do know that if I do that, will get rid of writer's block. So I never really get it anymore, because I do know that if you just sit down and do it, you'll get there. And if I can't write about the thing, if I feel a bit stuck, I can write. I just do this thing called free writing, which really works for me, where I set a timer for 10 minutes and I just write whatever's in my head. And that could be, people who are annoying me. It can be how tired I feel. It can be, whatever I'm thinking that moment. And then try and push my thoughts towards the thing I'm meant to be writing, and just write any old nonsense about it. I've got to write this thing. So sometimes we get commissioned to write. So Recently, I've been commissioned to write an encyclopedia entry on the Victorian woman writer called Amy Levy. And so you might not have much inspiration for a piece of writing like that, because you've just been asked to write it. But I know that if I sit down and if I just think, right, I've got to write about Amy Levy, what do I find interesting about Amy Levy? I just literally write the words that come into my head in that kind of way. I quite like her novel, so that kind of level of articulation, I eventually get to something where I think, oh, actually, I do like that about her writing, and she writes really interestingly on this kind of subject, and I'll go and read up about that. And I just always get somewhere, even if it's just one sentence in that whole load of waffle, I'll have something to work on. And so, yeah, it always works for me. Mm-hmm. How about you? Do you?
I've had quite significant periods where I found it very difficult writing at all, and so then I've handwritten, and then asked someone else to type it up for me. I've done that thing in the morning where you say, I'm going to write 1,000 words, and once I've done 1,000 words, I'm going to stop. And that can be really productive because you can do that in a couple of hours, and you've got the whole day free. Then you kind of think, right, I don't have to do that anymore today. I've done my 1,000 words. So yeah, there's kind of tricks and strategies you can use, aren't there, to try to get around that. I'm a procrastinator as well, and I tend to dice with deadlines quite a lot. I think there's also a bit of that inspiration trap that you fall into as well, where you think, oh, I don't really feel like it today. I'm not feeling inspired by this. And whereas, a lot of creative writing friends, and colleagues will tell you that writing is work. And you sit down and you work, and sometimes the work you do is not very good and you get rid of it, or it's partly good and some of it's salvageable, and sometimes it's really good, and you're in the zone then. So it's a tricky one. I don't always abide by my own advice there, and kind of and take a systematic approach to it as I should do. But I also kind of find I've been writing several versions or types of blog over the last 10 years or so, and that kind of writing where you're not writing for a specific either commission or for a particular audience, an academic audience, you're kind of writing for yourself a bit, really. That really helped me loosen up my writing practices and find a different kind of voice. So that was that was really useful. And even if I'm not writing academic stuff, I do tend to write that kind of thing, just as a way of getting notes and ideas down, and sometimes they turn into something that you're not expecting. They can then turn into a kind of a jotter's notebook, really, where you try out ideas which then form in much more significant things. That's happened quite a lot, really.